Howdy, watch fans. Guess who got kidnapped by work and shackled to their desks for the last few months? Yep, this guy. Episode number 10 features a Seiko Quartz chronograph, but not any old Seiko chronograph. This is my going away present from my awesome colleagues at work in Luxembourg. That's right, watch fans. Guess who got themselves kicked out of Luxembourg? This guy. So, if either the watch or the done got kicked out part catches your fancy, well, stick around. In the immortal words of Eric B. and Rakim, it's been a long time, I shouldn't have left you without a strong rhyme to step to. A lot has happened since my last episode, despite my begging, pleading, and appealing to the better sides of the company folks in Luxembourg. I have been booted, unceremoniously, or ceremoniously depending on your perspective, back to the good old US of A. Who am I to question the eternal wisdom of the company folks? But hey, que sera, c'est la vie, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you, at least I got a watch out of it. And let's be honest, here I am in a new place, a picturesque and quirky joint venture between Starbucks, Microsoft, and Amazon on the Puget Sound, better known as Seattle. I just, of course, no offense meant, Amazon, please do not revoke my Prime membership. Alright, so this, the birthplace of grunge on the shores of the beautiful Puget Sound, a hop away from some of the most beautiful forests, mountains, and rivers in these here United States. I mean, how lucky is this ugly mug, eh? According to Wikipedia, Seattle, Washington is home to approximately 735,000 people, with a total of 4 million calling the Seattle metropolitan area home. Founded in 1851, approximately 900 years after the first castle was built in what is now Luxembourg City. Now, to be fair, I'm not saying this area lacks history. I mean, come on, those amazing Native Americans have been inhabiting this place since 4,000 years ago, so there's plenty of culture and history running around this area for sure. So in the modern day, Seattle is home to tech companies and hordes of professionals driving up the property prices in the city. Who would have thought I would have moved from a butt-clenching expensive city like Luxembourg to an even more expensive city in Seattle? But hey, how can anyone go wrong with a proper city located just hours away from the wonders of millions of acres of national forests, the expanse of the Pacific, and towering Cascade Mountains? So, welcome to Seattle, where if you don't drink coffee or hike, people look at you as if they are staring right in the face of Sasquatch. No joke. So let me take this dismissal from Europe in stride. Let me appreciate the fact that I now have what seems to be 2,000 coffee shops per city block. Let me be thankful that I will have a place to hang my hat. And come on, watch collecting can be done in Seattle just as well as any part of the world. And while I'll miss the beautiful buildings in Luxembourg and the wonderful cafes and the fantastic friends I've made, come on, Luxembourg has graduated from a mystery city 2 years ago, and now it's one more amazing place to go back to and to yearn for. So thank you to the amazing city of Luxembourg and all the wonderful people that I met while I was there. So, the SSC495P1, the Seiko Solar Chronograph. I got a little teary-eyed when I received the SSC495P1. No, not because it was so doggone beautiful. Don't get me wrong, I am a sucker for a blue watch any day. No, this one is special because of the people of the office, right? They found it within their hearts to collect some money to get me a wonderful going-away present much after my own heart, knowing my penchant for Seikos and chronographs. SSC495P1 features Seiko's solar caliber V175 quartz chronograph movement. In line with any decent quartz movement, the V175 features a plus-minus 15 seconds a month. The movement is powered by the solar-charged manganese titanium lithium battery, and according to the user's manual, the watch can run up to 6 months from a full charge. I imagine this is based on the CMOS IC power saving functions, but the manual description is a bit vague and simply states that the life is approximately 6 months if the stopwatch is used for a shorter time than 1 hour per day. The SSC495P1, like most solar watches, has an opaque dial sitting on top of the solar cell unit that converts light energy to electrical energy to charge the battery. And while the solar cell is more than capable of converting different light received from different sources into electrical energy, there is a recommended light environment and charging time for the watch to function. This makes sense as the environment and the light source are the main determinants of exactly how well the solar cell works. So looking at Seiko's manual, it often refers to light intensity in lux or luminance, the measurement units for the total perceivable light on a surface. So, for example, on fair weather days under sunlight, approximated at 100,000 lux, the recommended charge time to maintain steady operation is 0.6 hours or 36 minutes and 5 hours for a full charge. On the other end of the spectrum, charging under fluorescent light at approximately 700 lux will require about 60 hours of charging for steady operation. And unfortunately, you would need to find a brighter set of lights, fluorescent lights, and charge it for about 110 hours for a full charge. That's right, 110 hours. So go outside, people. Charge your solar batteries via the actual sun. And by the way, did you know that Seattle, Washington, better known as the French Riviera of the Pacific Northwest, gets about 99.8 centimeters of rain on an average year? So what does that mean? Well, under the beautiful cloudy weather of Seattle, I would need about 3.5 hours of charging for steady operation or 30 hours for a full charge.
You're killing me!
So, off to the physical characteristics. Seiko packs all of this nifty solar technology into a really nice stainless steel case. And it's paired with a stainless steel bracelet with the ubiquitous Hardlex combo. And for basic statistics, the watch is 42 millimeters wide, about 46 millimeters if you include the crown. It's 52 millimeters lug to lug, and the lug width is about 22 millimeters. Making it an easy partner with all your favorite 22mm bracelets or straps. And the watch is about 15 millimeters in thickness. With the steel bracelet, the watch weighs about a manageable 116 grams. Now, one of the first things that catches your eye is this bezel. So it's stainless steel, but plated in a great blue color, which works great with the blue dial with silver polished indices. The dial is a classic 369 layout with seconds at 9, minutes at 6, and hours at 3 o'clock. The white lettering on the tachymeter ring and red highlights play nicely with the red chronograph hand. And generous portions of Seiko Lumerbright on the hands and the hour markers make for a fantastically dazzling show after a sunny day of charging. Now, while it is hard for me to stay objective on this watch given the sentimental value, there's very little to complain about this solar chronograph. From a visual standpoint, the blue opaque dial is a nice color on which to place high polished lume hour markers. The markers have sharp angles and a center lume line. I'm not sure if Seiko was going for these stylistic cues, but it's definitely taken from a sharp angle like a sports car, right? Which makes sense for a chronograph. Now, visually, the watch is great, and there's really 3 gripes that I came away with after wearing the watch for a bit. Number 1, typical to Seiko's more modern chronographs, the subdials feel a little bunched to the center and cut into each other. While I don't mind the style cue, which puts the minute subdial close to the hour subdial and cuts into it around 4 o'clock, I do think that the use of the polished borders on the subdials focuses the eye too much onto that cluster, and a bit jarring at first glance. However, you wear it a bit on the wrist and slowly you get accustomed to it, and right now I don't feel it too overwhelming from a visual perspective. And number 2, it has to be that tiny circular date window between the 4 and 5 o'clock. So you get this giant cluster of subdials, and buried in that cluster is this tiny date window, which seems like someone forgot that there was a complication for a day and decided to make it as unobtrusive as possible. I imagine it went something along the lines of, crap, there's a day complication, what do we do? Let's put a tiny hole so maybe nobody noticed that it's in a weird spot. And number 3, it has to be the rubber ring on the chrono pusher. Why? I mean, why, Seiko? You know that unless it is screwed in, duct taped, or welded onto the watch, there is a high probability that my fat fingers will lose this rubber ring eventually. Now, I haven't lost one of these things yet, but I think it's an added bit that is waiting to be lost at some point in the future after a haphazard cleaning or something. Now, surprisingly, one thing I didn't complain about is the bracelet, which actually felt pretty solid and gives the watch some heft. I don't get that jangly feedback I get from some of the entry-level Quartz Seikos, and it was a nice surprise. And while the steel bracelet is worthy of the watch, I have swapped it out with a Barton racing strap in blue to give it a more classic look. Granted that the wet weather in Seattle, the steel would probably work better, but hey, you cannot go wrong with putting a racing strap on a chronograph. They go together like peanut butter and jelly. Sorry for the food reference, I must be hungry. So, all in all, my take on the SSC495P1 is that it is a capable and pretty solar quartz chronograph. It comes in at a higher price point, but seems worthy of the price given that the feel and quality of the watch is pretty darn good. Seiko has been dabbling with solar technology since it introduced the A1565000 quartz solar in 1978, and Seiko seems capable of putting together a solid performing solar watch. Okay, unfortunately, after a bit of time with the SSC495P1, I noticed that it was functioning sporadically and would seem to go into power save mode after an hour despite numbers and huge amounts of hours charging under the sun and some plant growing lights. This is heartbreaking. Initial thoughts on this watch were solid from an aesthetic and functional standpoint. Now it is clearly malfunctioning and leaves me feeling a bit empty and disappointed, given the pure sentimental value of this watch. This must be how people feel after years of raving about Seiko value and quality proposition, and then bam, you get hit with a lemon. But the good thing is the watch is still under warranty, and since this malfunction happened during the first year, I don't have to send it back to Seiko Europe, and it is covered under the Seiko Global Warranty. Alright, well, let's turn this bummer into a positive. This is a great start for maybe a Seiko warranty and fix experience video, no? Granted, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking at the current rate of video production from the Lux Neophyte, that video will probably come 3 years from now. Touché. But I promise more videos to come. After all, there's a whole new city to raise a ruckus in, so many new corners of Seattle to get weird in, so many lattes and cappuccinos to be had while wearing a great watch. So, as we say around these parts, whatever you're wearing, whether it's a Glashütte or a busted out Seiko solar chronograph, you do you. In the immortal words of the great creative force who was Shock G, aka Humpty Hump of the digital underground, do what you like. Peace. Rest in peace, Gregory Edward Jacobs. Thank you for all the great music.